Go on your way. I remember growing up in Boy Scouts, taking a trip to New Mexico and camping in the desert, and sitting around a campfire looking out at the flat horizon and seeing in the dark a thunderstorm approaching. And the clouds were massive, and you could see it in its entirety. There were no trees obscuring the view. And I love that view of the sky. Everything above, nothing obscured. And I've wanted to find a place where I can look out at the sky in the night or in the day and see all the clouds, all the weather, all the wind approaching. I've wanted space. And in dreaming about this place where there would be space, I dream about a little house with solar panels on it so that I don't have to worry about the electricity company raising rates. And I would dream of having a well so that I don't have to worry about the water company raising rates. I dream of this independence. And I see that love of independence in certain people when I visit their house. They've chosen to live in a remote location, some of our parishioners in this church. They've chosen not to do a lot of interacting. They are doing their own thing. No one's there to tell them what to do. It's the same dynamic that C.S. Lewis writes about. He says that as people are drawn, they go further and further apart, going farther out into the distance, separating themselves from everyone else. And he calls out the pain that must be at the heart of that desire for separation. And so I'm torn, because I would love silence. But I see that maybe that would lead to loneliness as well. Go on your way, Jesus says. And he sends them out in pairs, the disciples, to different towns, not to go on their own way, to go and set up a little camping spot outside of a village, but to find hospitality in a house. To find a new relationship there, a connection. It's a little bit like the opposite of that song, You Can Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac. I love that song. Such a dramatic end to a relationship, to put it into music, to make it be so popular, and then to have to keep singing it over and over at every concert. To be known for that song. Jesus says, go on your way to a people, to a relationship, to an encounter with people who are sick and need to be healed. Go and receive from them whatever they put in front of you. Don't be picky. I am very picky and very careful about what I eat. That's why I make the food in our house. I am so picky. It has become very upsetting to my wife to make something, only to see me be very picky about receiving it. She's fed up. And so for 15 years now, every dinner, every lunch is something that I'm happy to put together. Just seems like it landed that way for us. I'm very picky. I don't know how it would be trying to visit all of the people that Jesus tells his disciples to visit. There must have been people that rubbed them the wrong way. And if you're anything like me, then you have no trouble imagining those kinds of people with whom you don't want to spend any time. You can imagine individuals who have hurt you, offended you, insulted you. They come to mind readily. You can imagine entire groups of people, even people you don't know, people different from you that you might feel uncomfortable around. And you can imagine being in their company. And perhaps, if you're willing, you can acknowledge that sense of superiority that is there, that we feel around others. You can imagine your self-sufficiency in those situations, your independence, your utter independence, and how fragile and delicate an illusion that can be. You can also imagine how quickly that independence, that illusion, might be undermined. If you found yourself, like the disciples, sent to the villages, dependent on another, in need of help, suddenly relying on shelter at the house of a stranger, in the company of someone with whom you would not want to spend your time, you can imagine you are no longer independent. Jesus says to the disciples, "Go on your way," and he knows the truth of being in the company of others. It's the truth that we learn we can rely on one another, even when we distrust them at first. These people are different and strangers. They are they, we are we worry. And you can imagine this deep truth about humanity when the disciples, the 70, going out in pairs, one village and another, away from their teacher, away from their rabbi, away from their authority by association. They are not with the healer anymore. They're not with the prophetic speaker to whom the crowds flocked to see. They have no credibility. They are on their own and by themselves. And they find themselves to be strangers walking in a strange land. That's how they find their identity. As Israelites finding a home in Egypt under Joseph's leadership, as children of Abraham, a wandering Aramaean, the people of God find their identity as a people of faith and reliance on God. They are not independent. They are not all-powerful. They are not rich and wealthy. They're not well spoken of. They're hardly well spoken themselves. The disciples are humbled by the discovery that they are the guests of others. They are enveloped in that leveling truth of the gospel. Abraham entertaining angels and not having known it. 3 strangers coming into his tent. That deep and mystifying truth about hosts of great banquets being taught by Jesus the stranger and learning more than they ever could have provided themselves. They are not independent. And that is a humbling truth. We are not in control ever. It's a truth that's learned when the disciples are sent out to go on their way, to try to make it on their own and discover that you do not make it on your own. You never do. You always have help. You are always fed before you feed others. You always are clothed before you clothe and house others. You are taught before you teach. No one person makes it their own way, as the disciples discover. And as they discover this truth, Satan is cast down. Jesus declares the power of evil, which teaches us to believe in independence and superiority and self-centeredness, is cast down. It's brought low because we have discovered compassion and empathy. It begins to reclaim its primacy over our lives. How would anyone, looking at our world today, imagine that hospitality would win out over selfishness? You look at the world. People who can get out of trouble get out of trouble. People who want to cause a fight cause a fight. The imagination comes from Jesus. He sends the 70 out, and he knows the truth. When he was born unexpected and unplanned to an unmarried couple, he grew up as an illegitimate embarrassment. Whispered about, spoken about, mocked, probably not welcome in the company of others. Who did he play with? Whose parents allowed them to play with him? A child of sin. But imagine some stranger coming to town, knocking at his mother's door, asking for help, receiving it from Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. Imagine later that stranger setting out to continue his journey, being told exactly who it was who had offered him hospitality, exactly who it was who had offered him grace. Imagine the stranger, his response. That it didn't matter whether Jesus was illegitimate or not, welcome or not, acceptable or not. Jesus and his family offered the stranger kindness when everyone else in the town did not. Who behaved like a neighbor to that visitor? But Jesus and his mother and father. Jesus knew the truth of finding yourself dependent on strangers, having offered that love to others before anyone offered it to his family. And maybe the poison of power, in contrast, of treating others with disdain, looking down on those who can't fight back, maybe the poison of evil in this world, the power of shame and sin, is reduced when moments of care and hospitality, welcome and kindness are witnessed by us. And maybe the truth is that we who claim to follow Jesus, we who think we are truly deserving, who truly belong, we who think, well, we've been in this community for decades, we who have obsessed over our reputations and every word uttered about us, maybe the truth is that we are wrong. Maybe our own perception of superiority and independence will finally be shown to be without foundation, to be contrary to the way of God. A leveling truth. Maybe for Jesus, growing up on the outskirts of one town after another, spending time in Bethlehem as an infant with no grandmothers to welcome him, spending time in Egypt as a refugee from Herod who hunted him, spending time in Nazareth and around Galilee, maybe for Jesus as a perpetual stranger with nowhere to lay down roots, with no one to grant him legitimacy, with no standing of his own, maybe he learned from that example of faith set by his parents, guided by the Spirit of God in their lives, moved by the presence of goodness in their own home. No matter what people said, maybe Jesus knew it in his body. Maybe he learned that in spite of self-centeredness in this world, the faith his parents had and the kindness they offered strangers demonstrate that they don't have to be independent or cut off. No one has to be superior. No one has to be perfect. Maybe Jesus knew from the earliest age, earlier than all of us, and maybe he wanted all of us to discern it as well as his disciples. No one is superior. No one is independent. All are beloved children of God, reliant on God, and reliant on one another as neighbors. And I do wonder when you learned this lesson. Did you show someone that they didn't have to be superior around you? That they were wrong? Have you found yourself feeling comfortable at a home with someone that you encountered for the first time? Maybe it was a person you would rather avoided, but then befriended. When did you overcome the temptation to see yourself as superior to others? And maybe you're ready for something more now. Would you continue to listen to Jesus' calling, and would you consent, like his disciples, like the 70, to go on your way as well? To spend more of your time among strangers? To live your faith and cure the sick? To proclaim the kingdom of heaven has come near? Will you go to be among strangers without any power of your own, without the comfort of your own money to fall back on, without any reputation you've built for yourself, without the dignity of self-reliance? This Independence Day weekend, would you permit yourself to be in a position of dependence? Even now, after all you've done, the long life you've lived, all the planning, all the responsible decisions, would you permit yourself to realize and understand that in others, even those we demonize and reject, deplore and condemn, will you realize that God is at work in them just as much as God is at work in you? Because God doesn't value any of us for our independence, our self-reliance. God doesn't demand our perfect behavior, and doesn't prefer some people over others. Would you allow yourself to discover that truth more? Let it flood your heart. That you are more loved than you expect. That you are accepted more than you can believe. And that you are welcomed into this world more than you can fathom. Would you welcome strangers in your midst? I pray you will, and I invite your response. Amen.